We're all thinking about everyone in Florida this morning after Hurricane Milton slammed ashore last night as a Category 3 and swept across the state with incredible force. Here's the path so far. It is now weakened, but conditions are still extremely dangerous. So please remember that. We're only just starting to learn about the full scale of this destruction. We've got a team of correspondents all across the state right now. Vlad Dutier is leading our coverage, and he's in Tampa. Vlad, good morning to you. What can you tell us about the situation there?
Good morning, Gail. The eye of the hurricane, Milton, has now moved into the Atlantic, and things in this area have calmed down within the past couple of hours. But folks across the state are still feeling the impact, with more than 3 million people waking up without power. Here in Tampa, hurricane-force winds and extreme rainfall battered the city overnight, but Tampa did escape the most dire storm surge predictions. In fact, as Milton made landfall south of here in Siesta Key, water was actually sucked out of Tampa Bay. The story around here, though, was the wind. Take a look at this. A crane collapsed onto a 46-story building in St. Petersburg, which is home to the offices of the Tampa Bay Times newspaper. Further south, toward the center of the path in Venice, Florida, the storm surge turned streets into raging rivers overnight. It also sparked a house fire, which you can see here, which burned a home down to its frame. But the destruction started hours before landfall, with an outbreak of tornadoes and some of them deadly. Part of a terrifying day and night here in western Florida. Hurricane Milton slammed into Florida's west coast Wednesday night. It made landfall in Siesta Key as a Category 3 storm with maximum sustained winds of 120 miles per hour, snapping trees, ripping roofs, and siding off homes. As the system barreled east, dangerous storm surge and flooding tore through the streets of Sarasota, pushing debris and this dumpster down the road.
At this point, it's too dangerous to evacuate safely, so you have to shelter in place and just hunker down.
Nearby in Venice, the powerful winds fueled this house fire, quickly spreading its flames. In St. Petersburg, hurricane-force wind ripped the fabric roof off Tropicana Field, home of the Tampa Bay Rays. That's also where thousands of cots were set up to house first responders. No injuries were reported. More than 18 inches of rain fell in the city, a more than 1 in 1,000-year rainfall event for St. Petersburg. In nearby Tampa, police rescued 15 people after a tree fell on their home. Everyone, including children, were safely brought to a nearby shelter.
Oh! Violent tornado, violent.
Before making landfall, Hurricane Milton's outer band spawned at least 20 confirmed tornadoes across Florida, destroying at least 125 homes, completely crushing a facility holding patrol cars at the county sheriff's office headquarters, and killing multiple people in a senior community.
This is the Rebel Call channel. Welcome to today's show. While Hurricane Milton doesn't appear, from everything that we're all being shown, to be as bad as they made it out to be, of course we know that the media will make this out to be as bad as possible so that they can continue to plant seeds for people out there to want to change in human behavior and how we live because of hurricanes, because of tornadoes, because somehow that's all correlating now with us breathing and living the way that we've lived for a long period of time. So, of course, they're going to tell us it's a lot worse than it is so that they can continue to push and place climate laws into our reality. But I do want to remind people out there, while the stuff that we're shown on TV, we can't believe, we can only look at some of the stuff that people themselves have posted. Just remember, it might not look as bad as we all thought it would potentially be, but if you happen to be one of the individuals who lost a loved one or whose home was wiped away, then it's worse than anything you could have ever imagined. I think a lot of us were looking at this wondering if they were going to put Tampa Bay literally underwater, and it seems as if they weren't able to. Now, is that because there was a monkey wrench thrown into their plans? Did God intervene? Did too much information start circulating about weather control and weather manipulation that maybe they eased up on the severity of it? Because there was a ton of things circulating about weather manipulation, and I've been screaming about it for a long time. So it was great to see that people out there were talking about geoengineering and sharing information on geoengineering And obviously some of the videos that I put out, I showed you a lot of the patents. I've shown you these things over the years. And all people like me really want is for stuff like that to circulate. It doesn't matter to me at all if it's my videos that are circulating, as long as the information is getting out, as long as people are learning what's really going on. Because the more people that wake up, the more we could put pressure on them to ease up. We do not need these people meddling in our lives any more than they already are. And again, I don't know how much information would actually change that, but if people do become aware and people do start pulling themselves out of the left and right, we take power away from them. We take control away from them. So I want to show you some of the stuff that is out there that people did share from this hurricane that shows us that it's very clear that this was a man-made hurricane. Of course, we know, and I'll get into that later in the video, all of the mainstream media trying to fact check things about controlling the weather. In fact, we have people in Congress literally coming out and lying to the people they're supposed to represent by telling us that you can't control the weather when, in fact, it's well documented. So they're either lying to the people that they're representing, which is obviously true, or they're completely brain dead. One way or the other, then these people should be replaced in Congress because they're clearly either incompetent or complete bold-faced liars. And we know that they're actually just complete bold-faced liars. They're not incompetent, they're sabotaging. That's what we're seeing going on. So the headlines were using words like destruction, like I showed you in that movie, Day of Destruction, Category 6. There was a lot of wording that was out there that was floating around in regards to Day of Destruction, Category 6, that the mainstream media was trying to say that this storm was going to be a Category 6. But I want to show you some of the things that show us that weather modification was used. So if you look at the headline, Destruction and Flooding as Milton exits Florida, and you scroll down, you'll start to see stuff about severe solar storms that are headed towards the earth, geomagnetic storms, and again, a lot of stories, once again, in the last 24 hours about the northern lights. So people don't seem to understand the correlation between weather modification and all of a sudden everybody out there being able to see the northern lights. Now, what we saw was a lot of purple sky before the storm came, and that's obviously a sign that the machines were turned on and activated. Why do we say that? Well, we all say that because we know that HAARP, the experiments that they run, cause artificial auroras. And that's why you keep seeing all of these artificial auroras popping up all over the earth right now. Not because of all of a sudden there's some type of thing going on with the geomagnetic frequency. They throw all this terminology out there to make people feel dumb. And then they just go, well, I don't understand what it is. I guess something's going on. It's weird. It's a weird world we're living in. Well, it's weirder than you could possibly think because you have a bunch of people who are more psychotic than any serial killer you've ever heard about, who are controlling things like the weather and controlling things like your mind via the media and the technology that we all use in our day-to-day lives. So we have psychopaths who are in complete control who are doing this with the weather. So yeah, it is a weird time to certainly be alive. But we see them talking about, and I say we see the mainstream media mentioning that there's going to be more northern lights. And of course, the skies turned purple all around Florida right before the storm came in. So again, I mentioned about HAARP's experiments cause artificial auroras. So when the HAARP machine is on, you will see artificial northern lights in the sky. They've come out and they've tried to make excuses as to why this is normal and why we shouldn't care. And again, the more people see it, the more desensitized they become. This is natural human behavior. The more you see something, the more you become desensitized. I think to myself, when I'm driving down a highway and you see a billboard, and the billboard is for like a strip club and it's some like exotic woman on there, and you literally could be in a car with children, you look out your window, you see a car of a family, and they're driving right by this. You think to yourself, wow, that's pretty sick, right? There's a billboard. But most people actually would just not even notice it now. Well, why wouldn't they notice it? They don't notice it because it's just common, right? Oh, there's women dancing. There's, the stuff that people see on the internet now, right? They become desensitized to it. But if you showed someone that billboard back in the 1970s and 80s, families and parents would demand that the billboard came down, and the government would intervene and take the billboard down because they'd say, well, kids shouldn't be seeing it. It's on the side of a highway. So that's how you become desensitized. Look at where we're at now. Look at all the stuff around us that nobody would have allowed to, have around us or around people 50 years ago. You become desensitized, you start accepting it, you go, oh, what's the big deal? What's the big deal, right? That's what the Northern Lights are now. The Northern Lights, when they first started popping up back in May in bizarre areas, people were going, whoa, this is crazy. I thought I'd have to get a plane ticket to Alaska if I ever wanted to see the Northern Lights. Well, now you could see it all over the place, and it's a weekly occurrence. And people out there are desensitized to it, so they're just starting to go, oh, whatever, it's just the Northern Lights. Next thing you know, they're going to be outside every day, and the sky's going to be purple, and they're not going to think anything of it. The same way that these people are outside every day, and they don't notice all of those fake clouds in the sky, right? Those chemtrail geoengineered clouds that they think are actually clouds. They don't notice it anymore. They're desensitized to it. They're so used to it. But I guarantee you, back in the early 90s, when people started noticing it, they were like, whoa, what is that? That's a weird sky. This doesn't look like what we were taught clouds are supposed to look like. Years go by, people become desensitized, and the government continues to get away with murdering its civilians and doing all sorts of manipulation to weather patterns and other things in our day-to-day lives. So, the sky turned purple. People out there were posting photos of it. And again, I talk about HAARP and how these scientists, who are not scientists, they're psychopaths, use radio transmitters to create artificial auroras. That is a sign beforehand that HAARP is on. That, you know, and I'm not talking about HAARP just in Alaska, because remember, the military bases around the country have HAARP on the military bases. So it's not coming directly from Alaska. They have it set up all around the earth, including the 5G towers, which are used as transmitters to turn and maneuver these storms. So HAARP's artificial air glow, they've openly talked about when this thing is on, how we'll see this stuff in the sky, and don't worry, it's just artificial. So here's some of the clips of the sky down in Florida before the storm hit.
The sky is literally purple.
So obviously that doesn't look natural, but there's a lot of people out there, if you actually watch how they respond to this stuff, they're so desensitized. They're like, oh, it's normal to have purple skies. It's normal for the sky to be freakish. Even stuff like this I'm about to show you. There's people out there who are looking at this. This might be the most frightening, one of the more frightening things I've seen. I thought it was actually AI generated or something. It didn't even look real to me. Of a woman just filming these clouds that were coming in over, you know, a suburban development in Florida that looks like a giant tsunami. And people out there are, you know, they're just like, you know, that's what happens before a storm comes. So they're so desensitized, they think things like this or, you know, trifectas of tornadoes forming over the ocean are now normal weather patterns. And that's how mind control works.
Look at this. This is girl.
So those are frightening clips, right? You got 3 tornadoes over the ocean. I mean, we're at a time period where people are so desensitized even from the movies that they see stuff like that and they're like, yeah, tornadoes can form over the ocean. Oh, I'm not saying that some type of small cyclone can't form over the ocean, but things like this do not occur. 3 tornadoes do not appear over the ocean in Florida, of all places, a few minutes before a massive Category 5 hurricane, which ended up being a Category 3 according to what we were told, appears, right? The sky above those homes, that is not normal. They look like a giant tsunami cloud coming over people's homes. But again, the people out there, it's that line from The Matrix, right? Most people are not ready to be unplugged. Many of them are so hopelessly dependent on the system that they will actually fight to protect it. So this is the equivalent of human beings. Just say you had a mass murderer. Say Michael Myers was stalking you every day, or Freddy Krueger was. This is the same thing as you being stalked by a serial killer, but wanting to be stalked by the serial killer. Like leaving your doors unlocked at night, knowing there's a serial killer coming after you. Baiting the serial killer into coming in your home and then smiling when the serial killer enters your home to end your life. That's what this is the equivalent of, because the people out there who are defending the people who are responsible for this are doing the same exact thing. They're so dependent on the system, they're actually defending people who want to see them dead. And they think that people like me and you are the enemy to the state. And really, what we're trying to do is wake people up to what's going on. So those are a few of the things that were very bizarre. And here's another one that I want to show people. So there was a cruise ship, and supposedly a cruise ship that ported out of Tampa before the hurricane's arrival. And lots of birds and moths were doing weird things in the sky. And this is because of the frequencies that are generated in the sky. These frequencies are what cause, whenever you see these stories about all these birds doing weird things, or all these things about, fish or mammals out at sea that are suddenly washing up on shore. Like, I'm sure you've seen some of the clips of the dolphins that just suddenly appear on the beach. And you're like, what are they doing? They're just running up the shore because their sonars are all messed up because of the frequencies that are getting shot directly at them. This is what happens with birds when these types of frequency machines are being utilized. So here's a clip from a cruise where, birds were just dropping out of the sky and flying in circles above, but I'm sure they'll make up a scientific excuse for this, saying that, the birds were panicking because the storm was coming in, right? So those are just some of the things out there that show us that weather modification was used. Now, we could look at it, we could say, maybe God intervened here. Hopefully God intervened here. Maybe they decided to take their foot off the gas. I know a lot of people who listen to my channel don't want to believe in weather modification and weather control, even though there's a lot of Bible verses that don't specifically say that God's responsible for some of the stuff that happens in end time prophecy. That says, the moon will turn red and things like that. That it's kind of out of people's realm of possibility that God could be warning us of the signs around us of what they're actually doing. But most people want to fully believe that God is responsible for all of it. Now, I'm not saying that God's not in total control, because he is. So I like to believe when I see this, that God intervened and didn't make it as bad as they wanted it to be, because we know they want to put Tampa underwater. Everybody out there see my videos over the years about the smart cities. Obviously, more people are catching on. I see a lot of people commenting, saying things like, did I know this or that? And, a lot of the information they're getting is probably from people who have gotten information from me in the first place, which is perfectly fine, which is why I continue to do this. But the goal has always been to wipe out these cities, to be able to seize land, to put in smart cities. They need the AI infrastructure. And one of the other funny things to note is all of the fact checking that flew out of Big Brother's butthole while all this was going on. We have all these fact-checking things. No, the government can't create hurricanes. BBC, there's no technology that allows humans to create and control hurricanes. I've already proven this to you, and you don't need me to prove it to you. You all know who listen to my channel. But anybody out there with 2 eyes and 2 ears, you can figure this out for yourself. All you need to do is remove some of the mind control that's been put on you over the years and say to yourself, oh, wait a minute, right. Why do I believe that they can't control the weather? Oh, because I've always been told you can't control Mother Nature, which has been done by design since we were young, right? But then when you look at government patents, like I've shown you in my videos, there's thousands of government patents about geoengineering and weaponized weather, right? I mean, the stuff about owning the weather by 2025. These are all government documents. These aren't things that people like me made in Photoshop, okay? So when you see the documents, you might not like me, you might not want to listen to my content, okay, but why don't you ask your government why they have documentation like this, why they have patents like this, and what the purpose of it is. And then if you don't want to believe that they would use it against you, that's on you. But the notion that it doesn't exist is bullcrap, and it's a lie out of their mouths. And these people should be thrown out of Congress, right? We have Republicans in Congress call out hurricane misinformation coming from within their own party. One of them, of course, is Mitt Romney. Now, if you don't know about Mitt Romney and his connection to the stuff that they tell you about Jeffrey, okay? Like I tell you how they give you this information about P. Diddy and Epstein, and that's all deliberate leaks. They're leading you down an endless rabbit hole where nothing will get done. You want to see people who are actually connected to these rings? Why don't you check out Mitt Romney's father? and the things that Mitt Romney's father was involved in, and I'm sure Mitt's also involved in. And Mitt just sits in Congress and plays his role, doesn't represent any of the people in the United States of America. He's a treasonist, but these people are sitting in Congress right now, and they're calling out misinformation, right? This is one of the guys. He says, amidst all the support, we have seen an uptick in untrustworthy sources trying to spark chaos by sharing hoaxes, conspiracies, and hearsays about hurricane response efforts across our mountains. I'm here to dispel the outrageous rumors that have been circulated online. Nobody can control the weather. Nobody can control the weather, right? So Chuck Edwards, a Republican, he's been lauded in the mainstream media that he's debunking hurricane lies. So to them, debunking is him just saying that nobody can control the weather. Oh, and they go, thank you, nobody can control the weather. There's no evidence that they can't control the weather. And then if they say, well, where's your evidence that we can? Well, we all have the evidence. We have the patents. We have government documentation from the Air Force talking about owning the weather. These aren't things that we're pulling out of their hats. So what I would say is Republican Edwards should be removed from office. He should be fired from his job. He's supposed to represent people. So he's either one, lying to the people, or two, he's completely incompetent because he doesn't actually know what the government does, what they're capable of, or the patents that they have, and he's supposed to be an employee of ours working in the government. So, Mr. Edwards, we're waiting for your resignation, which would be a nice thing for most of the civilians to do, would be ask for these people's resignations, because they probably deserve worse than that. They should be imprisoned for the things that they're doing to all of us. And I'm not even talking about just the weather modification. I'm talking about the psychological stuff that they're doing to people, how they're convincing children to castrate themselves. All the stuff that they're doing in Congress is sickening. It's sickening. And on top of it all, dividing all of us against one another and gaslighting us on a day in, day out basis. So Republican debunks hurricane lies, right? I love how they always debunk stuff with nothing. They just go, that's a lie. They go, you can't control the weather. Exclamation point. That's it. Nothing about, oh, well, let me explain. Mr. Edwards, explain to us, please, Mr. Romney, explain to us what these patents are. Are these make-believe? Did somebody in Congress draw these with a crayon? Are they fake patents? Is that what you want to tell us? Because these are all things that we could look up ourselves, thanks to your hive mind internet, that we're all able to get the documentation. One of the only good things that comes out of this is a lot of people have been able to pull themselves out of the matrix. But please explain to us then, if you can't control the weather, what all this stuff is, or Operation Popeye, or why the Air Force has a document called Owning the Weather by 2025. And last I checked, we're right on the cusp of 2025, and these storms are getting worse and worse and worse, right? Or maybe you could talk to us about all of the technology that people like Bill Gates have openly discussed, how they were going to tame hurricanes and they were going to make sure hurricanes weren't as strong. Well, these guys are openly talking about things like that. Why aren't they making the hurricanes less strong? Oh, they are? Oh, well, we would like documentation of that. And also, who gave them the authority to play around in the air, which I think as civilians we all should have equal control of. Your job isn't to be able to manipulate the weather, manipulate the sky. Your job is to literally sit there, use our tax money, and serve it correctly, which means, hey, we need new roads here? Fine, use our tax money and fix that. You're not supposed to be sitting in Congress taking our tax money with the intent to murder us with it, okay? So take that, stick it in your pipe, and smoke it, Mr. Edwards, Mr. Romney, if you even are misters in the first place. The simple facts are the government has the ability to manipulate the weather. These things have been documented, they have been proven. If you don't want to believe that they would do it to their own civilians, that's up to you. But enough of this notion that they can't control the weather, because they can, and it's been proven. And I've shown it to you trillions of times, and people out there should be aware of it. And anybody out there that thinks that it's not possible because it's been debunked, well, that means that your brain literally sits on autopilot day in and day out, because it hasn't been debunked at all. All we've had are people dismiss it, trying to use humor and make it sound like a crazy notion, because they don't want you to catch on to what they're actually doing and how they're meddling in your life, attempting to ruin your life, attempting to seize people's land, attempting to round people into FEMA camps, and on top of all of that, of course, murder you. So, that's on you if you don't want to figure that part of it out. So the hurricane didn't look, for anything I saw, as bad as I thought it potentially would be. But also the other thing to keep in mind, like I mentioned earlier, is the people who are directly affected by it, it's as bad as it possibly can be, right? If your home is gone, your pets are gone, your loved ones are gone, If you're sitting, in a tree right now, that's as bad as it possibly could be. I mean, other than being dead, but maybe that's not that bad of a thing in this world that we're living in. But point being, they're going to tell you that it might be worse than it actually was because that continues to make people out there say, we need change now, we need climate laws. But people will forget about Milton within a week or 2 or 3 because there's going to be more. And that's what people need to remember. There's going to be more and more and more and more. And they're going to continue to come. And you're going to continue to see bizarre weather patterns that they're going to dismiss as climate change. But the reality of the matter is they're the ones doing it. They're seizing land. They're rounding people up. And they're about to take away all of your God-given human rights unless people wake up to just how sick these people are. And I remind you again, think of the worst serial killers that you've ever been told about, that you've probably seen a documentary on and said, wow, that is the sickest thing I've ever seen. And just imagine it 10,000 million times worse because the people on TV smiling at you are the actual serial killers. The people on TV telling you that they want to suck the carbon out of the air with a vacuum are the serial killers. They're trying to suffocate you and they're smiling at you while you cheer for them on national television. That's how deep the psychosis goes. And I'm referencing people like Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, the corporations, of course, who are funding all of this. I thank everybody for being here. Prayers to anybody out there who is still or was directly affected by this. God bless all of you as always and your families.